The GDC conference is happening in the US as we speak, and as well as Twitter lighting up with cute selfies of happy game devs who've been allowed out of the house to go and eat hot dogs together and stuff, there have also been a lot of new indie games on show. In fact, Kind of Funny and The Mix did an hour-long showcase with no less than 60 indie games in it. There were a lot of first looks and homemade trailers, showing off a pretty wild variety of stuff. I watched the whole thing, so you don't have to, and here are the 20 games that popped the most for me. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and a subscribe, and I'll tell you about the channel's Patreon at the end. The showcase opened with a game called Hangry, which I've never heard of before. It's a sci-fi diner simulator with hybrid gameplay, in which you're tasked with collecting ingredients for a space diner and then cooking dishes with them. But the gathering part has a twist. It's not exactly plucking carrots and herbs out of the ground. You actually have to go and hunt down deadly aliens for their meat, so there's combat and cooking. It's like a 3D version of the pretty underrated game Battle Chef Brigade. And it seems like it's trying to do a bit of the high on life comedy game thing. Not sure how the jokes were landing, but it still looks fun. That one's Hangry, and it's coming soon to Steam. There were a whole load of sci-fi games, in fact. The next one that caught my eye was Project Tower. This is a sci-fi exploration game made by a small team of just 4 people. It has a cool looking mechanic that lets you morph into aliens and use their abilities to climb or glide. It has third-person combat with ranged and melee options, and Returnal-esque 3D bullet hell boss fights. Looks pretty cool. This one's coming out in Q3 2024. That's Project Tower. There was a bit of a Monster Hunter theme going on, in fact. The next game is Fera, the Sundered Tribes, which contains monster hunting. But the coolest thing about this one is that it's got aerial traversal, meaning that you can glide through the air in a really cool looking flying system. And it also has a grapple that lets you swing around in combat, like Forspoken style. There are village building and colony sim elements, and the dev said this one's made in Unreal Engine 5, meaning it will have nanite and lumen technology. This one's going into early access this summer. That's Fera, the Sundered Tribes. And next we had a game that is a new development in the silly video game naming convention. It has both a colon and a hyphen. It's Kingdom, 2 Crowns, Call of Olympus. I don't know, man, I think this word salad naming convention really has to stop. Eventually every name will be taken, and we'll be getting SEO doggerel like Ruby Wars, Blast of Patchouli, the Silk Gods. But anyway, this trailer was just a tiny tease. They say it's a side-scrolling micro-strategy game. It had nice-looking pixel art, and it's from Raw Fury, who seem to be moving into development as well as publishing awesome games. And that's enough for me to keep an eye on this one. Raw Fury rarely miss. That is Kingdom, 2 Crowns, Call of Olympus. There were a couple of top-down combat games as well. I thought NanoApostle looked pretty cool. It had a Hyperlight Drifter kind of feel, and apparently it's a boss rush game, so if you like intense combat, keep an eye on that one. And there was also Undead West, a pixel art twin-stick shooter, in which you play a dead cowboy travelling through hell. It has super vivid, crunchy graphics in black and red. It's hard to tell how the gameplay might feel in this one, and I think that's all important, but it has a very striking look, like a cross between West of Dead and Bleak Sword. Only a 2024 release window for this one, but that's Undead West. The next one really confused my brain. It's called Selfloss, and there's a town in Iceland called Selfoss, so I kept blinking to see if I was reading it right. But they are unrelated because this is an interesting looking isometric game. It's actually based on Slavic lore. It looks like this one has some puzzling and combat, but the thing that caught my eye the most was the nice boating around with a cool water effect. It's coming out on all the consoles and Steam, but no release date for this one, so keep watching the skies for Selfloss. And I guess this was the dreamy section of the presentation. The next one is called Always in Mind. This one saw the player platforming through a weird, dreamy world that had a psychonautsy sort of surrealism to it. Things like a lighthouse that's the size of a chess piece, a library of flying books, things like that. It uses light very nicely, and it's been picking up some nice early word of mouth apparently. There's a demo on Steam of that one, so check out Always in Mind. I thought the next one was one of the most polished looking games in the whole presentation. It was called Home of the Yokai. It has a really nice looking world with an old Japan vibe and architecture and symbolism. It was hard to see what the gameplay is. It looks pretty mixed, but there were glimpses of exploration, what looks like it might be RTS combat, maybe, and some building stuff too. I really like the look of this one. It's got a general 2024 release date, but I'll be wishlisting that for sure. That's Home of the Yokai. The next cool one was called The Signal. It's a sci-fi open-world crafting and survival game, which is absolutely not my thing, but I'm a total sucker, it turns out, for seeing a player character in a spacesuit running around in a cool environment. And this one has alien relics, weird buildings, crashed ships to explore. You get to scan plants and stuff. You build a network of antennas that connect together and do something, I assume. So even though this one's not my genre, it was pretty intriguing. That's The Signal. And the presentation kind of took a turn here. We got a whole load of weird games, which I'm very much in favour of. The first one was Play Rough. It was some kind of top-down game where you run around doing stuff. There was combat, dialogue, some mini-games maybe. There was a discotheque scene, but it was the aesthetic that was really selling this one. It has a sort of manic Pizza Tower, WarioWare kind of vibe, and it looks like they're really nailing that style. That one is called Play Rough. Also in the weird section, there was a creepy looking game called darkwebSTREAMER, where you apparently become an occult streamer in the 90s dark internet, and they call it a horror RPG sim. There was a weird ragdoll precision platformer called Clown Meat, that I guess is for Super Meat Boy fans maybe? And there was another one called Sorry We're Closed, which was a stylish retro horror survival game about shooting bugs and opening your third eye. I think that's one for the Silent Hill and Resident Evil fans out there. There was also a section dedicated to weirdo racing and physics games, including Esophaguys, a jiggling physics-based co-op game that maybe coined a whole new genre in the neck stretcher. There was also Ultimate Godspeed, a sci-fi racer seemingly containing the entire cast of Labyrinth. That one looks really fun. And there was Ollie Frog, a colourful skating game where you're a frog who, does ollies. But the highlight of this section for me was Phantom Spark. This is a dreamy sci-fi time trial racer with beautiful looking graphics, very stylish game. And it has a zen, flow state kind of feeling. I've actually got my hands on this one and played it. The devs are based here in Reykjavik, and it's simply brilliant. You race your little bug around these crumbling, dreamy tracks to 90s electronica. The races are short and snappy. First you get to know the track, and then you race against the area's champion to unlock the next track. You can also race against your own ghost to improve your time. It's lovely to play, it's silky smooth, intuitive, and wonderful to look at too. It's penciled for a summer release, and you can wishlist Phantom Spark on Steam now. There was also a cool looking game called Slider. This one reminded me a little of the game Carto, if you've played that one. It used to be on Game Pass, where you slide map tiles around, and that influences the world around you, which opens up some interesting puzzle possibilities. I like the look of that one a lot, that's Slider. And there were also a couple of Devolver joints that we've seen already. Children of the Sun was here, it was in Steam Next Fest. This is the game that's a puzzler shooter, where you fire and then control a single bullet, like a playable version of the JFK magic bullet theory. And we also saw a little bit more of Pepper Grinder. I'm playing this one now, I think everyone knows about it already, but it's definitely one to watch. It's probably the game on this list that's coming out the soonest, it's coming out at the end of this month. So that was the games that caught my eye from the Kinda Funny and The Mix showcase at GDC. I hope that you enjoyed it and you found some games to wishlist. If you did, please give this video a like, and you can always subscribe to the channel for more. Likes and comments really help the videos to rise up through the algorithm, so I really appreciate it if you've got a moment for that. And if you're interested in supporting the channel further, there is a Patreon at patreon.com/gaminginthewilds. And all of my patrons get an invite to our patron-only Discord server and bonus content on Patreon as well. It's only $1 a month, and I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in that. So take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you on the next one.